So in this video, I'm demonstrating how I drew a field of poppies in soft pastels in a more loose painterly style. I wasn't going for realism in this, so I worked quickly and I kept a lot of details out. I used UArt 500 grit sanded paper, which is one of my favorite papers to use with soft pastels. It comes in many different grades, 500 being about middle of the range. I believe it comes anywhere from 200 grit all the way up to 800 grit, with 800 being a finer grit. You can use wet media like alcohol inks or watercolor on this, and you can also add lots of layers for detailing. So it's a good all-around paper to use for soft pastels. I used a variety of soft pastels for this drawing and a couple of Prismacolor new pastels, and those are a harder pastel. So I started out by putting an underpainting in with colors that are complementary to what my final drawing will have. Complementary colors are those that are opposite from one another on the color wheel. This helps to add interest to your drawing. In order to keep this layer from mixing with my later layers and making a muddy colored mess, I came in with a large paintbrush that has isopropyl alcohol in it, the kind you buy at the drugstore, and I use that to create a sort of paint. As soon as this dries, I can come back on top of it with another layer of pastel and my first layer won't move or blend. This helps you to not fill up the tooth of the paper too quickly. Just make sure you're using a paper that can handle wet media or your paper may buckle. I'm using a few different reference photos for the poppies since I couldn't find one photo that had the flowers in the kind of arrangement that I wanted. I'm starting out with a darker base color for the poppies and I'm coming on top of it with lighter, brighter colors. Don't worry about getting your drawing exactly perfect at this stage. Pastels are so easy to rework, especially when you're using a high quality paper like UArt or Pastel Mat or the Canson Mitance Touch. You'll see me work and rework the petals several times before I'm happy with how they look. If you're using one of the cheaper papers, or if you're using a paper that's not suitable for pastels, like Bristol board, then you're not going to be able to do this as easily. I'm avoiding putting the black centers into the flowers until I'm mostly finished with the petals, since I don't want to accidentally smudge some of that black into the petals. I'm paying attention to my reference photo. I'm looking at one petal at a time. But it doesn't matter if it looks exactly like the photo. Close is good enough. This isn't a portrait. This isn't, a pet or a family member. This is a flower. The petals can be different from one another. They can be different from the reference photo. Nature isn't perfect either, so they might not be perfectly symmetrical or perfectly lined up the way you'd think they would be. I am, however, paying attention to where the lighter areas are and where the darker areas are in each petal in the photo. This is going to help it make it look more realistic. If I want a really bright area on a petal to draw attention to that area, I use a brighter color and I use more pressure to lay down the stroke. I also take care not to smudge this stroke with my finger or blend it into anything, or else you'll lose that brightness to it. Now for the background, I'm keeping my strokes really loose. I'm not drawing anything specific. I'm using dark greens, dark reds, dark purples, pretty much any dark color that I can find. Then I'm going to come on top with my lighter greens. I used the side of the pastel in some areas and the top of the pastel in others. You can see me here making a twisty motion with my hand with the side of the pastel to make those leafy shapes. But I'm not drawing any specific leaves. I take care to make sure that all the leaves aren't going in the same direction because this isn't going to look natural. I tend to start out with my darker colors when I'm working with pastels and then move on to the lighter colors, and I usually let them blend in a little bit into the previous layers, but I'm blending more with the pastel stick itself than with my fingers, just because that's the way I like it, how it looks. I decided at the end there to add some more poppies into the sky area. I decided that would bring things together a little more. So I added some more dark reds followed by lighter reds on top. I didn't really add much of any detail in this area since I wanted it to recede more into the background. If you add as much detail in the background as you do in the foreground, everything is going to look like it's the same distance away from the viewer. If you really want it to recede, take care to not add lots of detail, or you can also blend or smudge some areas out of focus. And here is the finished drawing. If you like what you see, please make sure you hit that like button. If you happen to make something similar based on this tutorial, please tag me in it. I would love to see your work. And if you would like to see more of this, please remember to hit that subscribe button. All right, thanks. I'll see you next time.